We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
And we're back on Liberty Nation Radio, heard coast to coast on the Radio America Network. I remain your host, Mark Angelides, and we continue to be joined by Tim Donner. Thanks for sticking around, Tim. So earlier in the show, we were talking about the run-up to inauguration. Now, I think that everybody is almost fascinated in almost like a train wreck thing where you can't tear your eyes away about what that first day in office will entail after the ceremony, the inaugural ceremony. What signs, what hints, what statements have we had about Donald Trump's first day in office and perhaps his 100 days leading out?
Well, I think the thing that stands out the most is the promise to seal the border. And for Tom Homan, the designee for border czar, although that's not a cabinet position, so you can just appoint him to that. It doesn't require Senate approval. The plans are already obviously well in place to round up the illegal immigrants who have committed crimes, and that means crimes not just in this country, but who have documented crimes committed in their country of origin. And I think that's going to be unleashed at about 12:01 on January 20th, right after Trump puts his hand on the Bible and takes the presidential oath of office. Seal the border and start the process of rounding up the dangerous illegal immigrants who have, terrified the American citizens across the country. He's going to unleash drilling and fracking to a degree that we've never seen before, because, as Trump rightly points out, the reason our cost of living is so high all relates back to energy. People think, well, energy just relates to the price of gas at the pump or how much it costs to heat my home. But in fact, if you look at the supply chain where goods go through 5 or 6 different middlemen before they get to the consumer, it requires energy at every step along the way. So he's right to say the way he's going to bring down the cost of living is to unleash drilling, which he calls drill, baby, drill on day one. And that's, by the way, the one day that he said he would be a dictator. And he said he'll close the border and drill, baby, drill. And he'll also open up fracking to a degree that we've never seen before, fracking on federal lands. And all of this is going to contribute to a lower cost of living. He's going to reverse, probably dozens of Biden executive orders, some of which he's doing in these final days to make things difficult for Trump. So he's going to reverse probably dozens of executive orders, as he did when he came to office in 2017. And I think the most intriguing question of all is pardoning the January 6th so-called insurrectionists, those who are sitting in the D.C. jail right now. And there's over 800 of them who have been convicted of crimes related to January 6th. He has promised to pardon all of them. Will he do it on day one? Will it be a blanket pardon? Will it just be for those who walked through an open door, as opposed to people like the Proud Boys, who instigated the riot, broke windows, attacked police, and seized offices? That's a big question. Whether he does that on day one, I'm not certain, but there'll be a lot of attention focused on that.
My supposition would be that it would have to be a case-by-case basis. Essentially, but there's a great way to sort this out if you have an Excel spreadsheet, isn't there? You look at who's been charged with what, and if it's criminal trespass, I think right, all the ones who are just in the criminal trespass column, they're pardoned, and then obviously dig deeper into it. I think it's pretty fascinating that earlier in the show you were talking about the imposition of tariffs and combined with what you said here about closing the border on day one. And I think a lot of people don't really realize that the tariffs are not there to offset the cost. The tariffs are there to force cooperation with the incoming administration's policy agenda. And they're designed to be more painful to the countries that aren't falling in line with America's policy agenda than they are for Americans. And people don't really realize that, that at least I don't want to say people, because people in general are pretty great at figuring things out. But the main messaging that's coming across in the let's call it the more left-leaning legacy media is that it's Americans who are going to get hurt by these tariffs, and they don't seem to acknowledge that the tariffs are a tool to gain compliance with the America First agenda. Why do you think that's being obfuscated?
Well, because, we've been told for a long time, and with good reason, I suppose, by the likes of the Wall Street Journal and free market economists, that tariffs will cost the American people. And to a degree, they're right.
Yeah.
Because a tariff increases the cost of goods coming over the border, and that's a cost increase that's passed on to the American consumer. However, the point of tariffs, beyond it as a negotiating tactic for Donald Trump, is to protect American jobs. And the question ultimately becomes, would you give up lower prices in return for creating more American jobs that are not going to get shipped overseas? There's also this sense of revisionist history that's been going on for a long time about tariffs. When Alexander Hamilton, as Secretary of the Treasury back in the early days of the Republic, was trying to figure out how to create something close to a full employment economy, he employed tariffs to prevent foreign powers from overwhelming the American continent with goods. And therefore, he was protecting American jobs. And that was Alexander Hamilton. And that takes you all the way back. And that's ultimately, I think, in addition to being a negotiating tactic, that is what Donald Trump's main priority is. He doesn't want goods sold to Americans being made in Mexico or China or elsewhere. He wants those goods to be made here. He wants those jobs to be here. And that's the main purpose of his tariff regime.
Yeah, and as you said, if that combined with the drill baby drill manifesto pledges, as it were, the actual cost of production of whatever goods are then produced in the United States will actually be a lot more competitive, because obviously it's a third of the cost of everything is basically energy. We'll be back with Tim Donner after this short break. Don't go anywhere. We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.